Little boys playing, watched over by a mom they are too young to remember.
And so it's
Kira
titled,
Johnson's
I Remember
husband,
Mommy.
Charles, hasn't stopped remembering.
Days I Remember Mommy Well.
He's still grieving, still angry from that night in hospital.
I can see the Foley catheter coming from Kira's bedside begin to turn pink with blood.
He says doctors told them now 3-year-old Langston's birth would be a routine cesarean section.
I just held her by her hands. I said, please, look, my wife isn't doing well. And this woman looked me directly in my eyes and she said, sir, your wife just isn't a priority right now. It wasn't until 12:30 a.m. the next morning that they finally made the decision to take Kira back to surgery.
As critical minutes turned into hours, Johnson says he was continually ignored by staff at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles as Kira's health continued to suffer.
When they took Kira back to surgery and he opened her up, there were 3.5 liters of blood in her abdomen from where she had been allowed to bleed internally for almost 10 hours. And her heart stopped immediately.
Johnson is suing the hospital for the loss of his wife, and with the case pending, Cedars-Sinai told CNN in a statement that they could not respond directly because of privacy laws, but that Cedars-Sinai thoroughly investigates any situation where there are concerns about a patient's medical care. Kira was a successful entrepreneur who spoke 5 languages. This is video she recorded teaching her firstborn son to speak Mandarin. This was a woman who could fly planes and skydive, seemed invincible to her family, which is why her death is so much harder to understand.
That's when I started to do the research for myself, and I realized that, oh my gosh, we are in the midst of a maternal mortality crisis that isn't just shameful for American standards, it is shameful on a global scale.
The charity Every Mother Counts, which was started by supermodel Christy Turlington, works across the world on maternal health, but also in the US. Because America is the only developed country with a rising death rate for pregnant or new mothers. Approximately 700 women in the US die each year. Globally, the comparison is stark. More mothers die in childbirth in America than they do in Iran, Turkey, or Bosnia-Herzegovina, even Kazakhstan. All have lower maternal death rates.
Finally, they took her to the doctor.
Lindsay Addario is a Pulitzer Prize-winning war photographer who's documented the deaths of women in childbirth around the world in the same way she tackles a war zone.
It's almost more heartbreaking because I think when I go to war, I kind of know what to expect.
What she did not expect was to find that her own birthplace, America, was failing pregnant women in some of the same ways that much less developed countries fail their mothers.
When I go to the United States, I see, these little scenes of heartbreak. I just can't believe they're happening in my own country. It's almost harder.
Every Mother Counts says many of their deaths are because of an unequal healthcare system and systemic racism. Public health experts warn this crisis is not just affecting poor or sick moms, but also healthy, college-educated African-American women.
We do know that there may be issues in terms of institutional racism. A well-educated African-American woman with more than a high school education has a 5-fold risk of death compared to a white woman with less than a high school education.
There is a failure and a disconnect for the people who are responsible for the lives of these precious women and babies to see them and value them in the same way that they would their daughters, their mothers, their sisters.
Now part of an unnecessarily large fraternity of Americans who've lost partners in childbirth, Charles is pushing for policy changes, raising awareness, and trying to hold doctors and hospitals accountable.
If I can simply do something to make sure that I send other mothers home with their precious babies, then it's all worth it.
And he's raising his sons, teaching them about their mother.
What I try and do is just wake up every day, make mommy proud, repeat.
When did you get so good?
Robin Curnow, CNN, Atlanta.